Hello and welcome to today's motorhome chat, and today I'm going to try and answer the commonest question that I actually get, which is how much does it cost to live in a van all the time? But first of all, I've got to say quite clearly that there are so many variables. This can only be taken as an extremely rough guide. Furthermore, I used to write business plans on real estate projects, and as this is a monetary plan of sorts, I'll try and keep it as simple as possible without going into too many of the things I once had to go into. So in this video, I'm thinking largely of those who intend to travel and not those who are doing this as an alternative to renting a flat. Because if you're going to be in one place all the time, then living in a van may become rather uncomfortable, to say the least. And unless you're living somewhere like southern Spain or southern California or somewhere like that, the cost of keeping it warm in winter is really going to be prohibitive. So please bear that in mind. Now, number one, food. Now, food costs may change as you travel, and I can really only talk about what I do. So now, when I travel, I eat what the locals eat. So I pick up fresh vegetables, often from people selling by the side of the road. You never know, you might find a place next to your favourite supermarket, you might not. On the whole, I think food costs are roughly the same wherever you choose to live in Europe. Now, there are exceptions. There are countries which are far more expensive than others, such as Switzerland. But if you go into, for argument's sake, a Lidl in Poland and Lidl in UK, Lidl in Italy, you're going to pay roughly the same for whatever it is you're actually buying. And so that, roughly speaking. Now, there are some things which do tend to have greater cost differences. For example, obviously, if you're buying a product which is locally produced. Now, for example, in Sicily, I'll pay €3 for a 10-kilo sack of oranges, and you know, probably getting on for paying €3 for a 1-kilo bag of oranges somewhere else. So that if it's local produce, obviously it's going to be cheaper. So another thing is, for example, if you eat bread, then it appears to me to be somewhat larger regional differences, but there's just a couple of ideas. Now, I personally think that when you're on the move, part of the excitement of travel is the food. In fact, that's a big part of it for me. Particularly, I mean, I do like the vegetables and the fruit and vegetables. Oh, that's why I like southern Italy so much. That for me is a very large part of it. But don't want to just do a broadcast about southern Italy. I'll give you another example. I mean, products I really like, for example, beetroots, which you get in Central Europe. So that is another thing. Now, I should really do some videos on the food in these countries, but I'll have to leave that for another time. Right, 2. Electricity. If you live in a van, assuming you've got solar panels, you're generating your own electricity. In my case, I've got 2 times 100 watt back contact solar panels, which were manufactured in the United States, and I believe they are amongst the most efficient in the world. And if you've got something similar, this should be quite enough for your needs for around 9 months of the year, particularly if you use a 12-volt adapter for your computer. I'll do a separate film on that, although I have mentioned it in the past in the films on electricity. Now, gas should take care of the rest, such as your maybe a heating and maybe a fridge. Now, of course, it takes a long time to pay off the cost of installing solar panels, and that's something you'll need to calculate. But effectively, for men, it's, I hate to use the word free, but it's free. It's sort of free. It's you're paid up front for it, if you like. Now, now looking, with a couple of friends of mine, we're looking at means of improving electricity supply to motorhomes. And if you've seen any of my films on my motorhome rebuild, you'll have noticed that we have clearly come up with something, otherwise we wouldn't have gone on installing this 230 volt devices in the van. But so far this is just an experiment, but I hope to come back to that at a later date. 3. Gas. Gas works out much cheaper than living at home, and I can't explain this. A tank of gas, you know, a canister, this big one, sort of, for me, it'll last me 6 months in the summer. And as I try to go to warmer places in the winter, it sort of lasts me all the year round, 6 months. So I'm exaggerating a bit because I'm now in Central Europe, where I speak from, and last year I spent most of the winter in Germany, Austria and Switzerland, but that was an exception. Normally I'm in Italy. Now my fridge, and this is a very important thing, is uses electricity, so obviously that's a bit less gas. And you may have noticed from the films I put up, I'm very interested in nutrition and health. I do all my own cooking. There's endless cups of tea and coffee, and I know a lot of you possibly do drink endless cups of tea and coffee, but you don't do your own cooking. So, you might just stick a can of beans on the pan or something like that. So maybe I'm using that way. I'm using more gas than the average is. Now, where things tend to work out more expensive is when you need to start heating your van. Now, a new 4 kilowatt Truma heater will consume a full tank of LPG in 68 hours. Now, old ones consume more. Mine consumes more, for example. And so mine would be dead within like 2 days. And I reduce the heat at night. So to give an example there. So now this is really much more than many people pay to heat their flat or house. Well, maybe not house, but certainly flats. So in the winter, a van is really much more uncomfortable than a house or flat, unless you've got a brand new van with the latest insulation. For example, in January 2017, I was lucky enough to travel around southern Germany in a brand new Heimer, and you can see my comments and my experiences in a playlist I've called Winter in the Van in Germany. And it was really very comfortable. It was warm, and that is despite the temperature falling to -13 outside. So why does it cost so much money for the gas in a house? That's what I can't work out, these estimated bills and all the rest of it. But anyway, that's really a subject for a different film. Water, next one. Now if you live in a house, you pay for the water. Now if you're on the road, you normally get it for nothing. You either get it from, I get my water from public wells. I'll go to places like cemeteries and pick it up there. You can get it from petrol stations. You're going to have to go to the petrol station anyway to buy fuel, so you may as well get some water while you're there. Sometimes maybe you won't be able to fill it up completely, but you should be able to get a fair bit out of it. If you go to a campsite, and normally it's included in the campsite cost, although some campsites actually charge for water. But anyway, let's face it, water is a lot cheaper if you're living in a van. What about wastewater? Now, you can dispose of wastewater down a drain, but please don't do it where people see you. I mean, I don't really have a problem with the grey water being stuck down a drain, although it's what other people think, and I really don't want motorhomes to get a bad name. But sewage, though, is different. Now you may be thinking, oh, well, sewage just goes through the sewage system anyway. Yes, perhaps it does, but don't stick it down drains. It's the reputation of all of us, which just do it at a proper facility. And the reason you might have to go to a campsite when your cassette is full is to dump your sewage. Of course, you can't save on costs by getting a spare cassette. And that would resolve that problem. You've got black tank. Black tanks are normally about 230 litres or something. Of course, you must have a really big van if you've got something like that. Next thing is insurance, and if you're living in a van, insurance is much more money than living at home. I pay almost double the cost. I still do have a house, so I've got buildings and contents insurance for my house, and so really that's a major difference. Now diesel is the next thing I want to talk about. Now fuel is much more expensive because vans burn more than cars do. However, when your van's your house and you're saving money in other ways, I mean, is this really a consideration you want to go for? I mean, particularly when I hear people say, well, what miles per gallon or kilometers per, sorry, liters per 100 kilometers. People ask these questions if it's out of curiosity, that's one thing, but when they consider this as part of the cost of the motorhome, this is a tiny cost of the motorhome. I don't really think people ought to be thinking of that. Anyway, but I think actually more than the cost of the fuel is the cost of parking the thing, which is the problem. And for vans, you often end up, if you park in the cities, you might have to buy 2 tickets because the van is twice so long, and often you're not allowed to do that, or they'll charge you for, even though you've got 2 tickets. I've heard these cases where you buy 2 tickets, and because you've gone over the white line, you'll get a fine. Or something like that. But anyway, right, diesel. Next one is the internet. Now, mobile internet is becoming increasingly available in the European Union. There are no longer any voice roaming charges. There are data roaming charges above a certain limit, so check before you set out in your van. Now, I could go into that in a little bit more detail because I've tried to understand there's a mathematical formula when you go out of your own country. Thing is that these days the cost of internet, many people using the mobile internet in their homes, so it's not the horrendous cost that it was only 2 or 3 years ago. Now, most campsites have Wi-Fi, and quality varies enormously, and some charge extra for it. So, in my own case, I was using O2 from the UK for over a year, and the cost was really very reasonable. I've got no complaints at that at all. So, that's I don't think that's really so much of a problem. There are companies, I've got to point this out, there are companies and countries, and the one company that comes to mind to me is in Italy, not to use the state or the former state telecoms provide team. The costs are pretty horrendous, and the service is matches the horrendous costs. Right, next thing, campsites. Now, cost of a campsite varies enormously, from around €10 a night, maybe, or even €5 a night. Sometimes you can find an Air or Stellplatz, something you might not have to pay for at all, and they can go up to standard sort of place up to €40. There's even places that cost even more than that, but now we're getting the super luxury. Now, the advantage of a campsite is this: is you get access to hot showers, a kitchen, you've got electricity, you've got a waste dump, you've got lots of other facilities. And if you're going to stay for a place for a long time, why don't you see if you can do a deal? I mean, this is what I would do. You know, people say to me, I want to go to Spain for 6 months. What would you want to do? I just want to sort of hang out in the sun or whatever. Well, yeah, do a deal. You know, I mean, you don't have to... that would make a lot of sense. Also, if, for example, there are people who want to sort of, for some reason, I mean, students or something like that, or whatever, they want to sort of stay studying and being in the van, and well, yeah, see if you can do a deal with a local campsite, because you know, if particularly off season, the campsite's empty anyway, and you know, you're not going to get a deal in July and August, but the rest of the year, yeah, why not? And so, you know, give it a go. Have a look at my site, which is motorhomefulltime.com, and I've got the sites there right down. The site's open all year round, and it may be in a place you want to go to, and contact them and say, look, I want to stay here for 3 months whilst I lie in the sun, or do a bit of studies, or I write a book, or whatever it is you want to do. See if, I'm sure they'll come to agree. Really, when I've brought the subject up, not once have I had a problem. And you know, if you're going to be staying long term, you'd expect really serious discounts. I mean, something like, you know, certainly 50% and probably more. So anyway, house or van. So I want to now look at the last consideration. Now maybe I'm coming into the realms of being a real estate developer again, sort of thing. A van's expensive. It's not as expensive as a house or a flat, but it's expensive. You need to calculate the interest payments on it. How much interest will you lose by paying for it by cash? Now obviously if you own a house, you could rent that out and use the money from the rent to pay for your van lifestyle. Just an idea. I probably haven't answered the question I started out with, and the reason is I can't. I can only tell you about the way I do things, and people say, oh well, that's you. Well, of course it's me. I can only talk about me. I cannot talk about what it's like for people who may need medical treatment. That's a question I often get. How do you get your meds? Well, I don't need any, so you might think I need them, but I don't. Well, I don't have them anyway. And so I can't answer that question, but I think in my case it cost me less than living in a house. But there's a few points here, and the first thing is I'm not using campsites as much as other people, and when I find a place I tend to stay there anyway. I'm actually, despite the fact I've got this nomadic lifestyle, I'm very conservative. I find a place I like, you know, I can be there for ages, and there's places I was there for ages, I just want to go back to them. And so there's two places above all which I like so much that I really feel I could live there all the time. I'll tell you where they are because you'll ask anyway. The first one's in Sicily, in eastern Sicily, and the other one is in northeastern Italy, same country. The other side of the country, though, it is the area around Gradisco di Zonzo. This area I thought was absolutely wonderful. I really liked it there. Anyway, so they're places I could live in. You can ask direct questions below. If I've got ideas, if the same question comes up several times, I'll try and respond to it. Maybe other people have ideas, which is always a good thing. I'm going to say what I think, and perhaps other opinions can be made by other campers. I'm sorry, I didn't give you a very good answer to that one.